So now that the Lamar Science Dreadnought is live, we have information around the stuff that was missing in the blogs, mainly the information around the console, the new pets, and the Starship trait, which, like I said, was missing from the blogs for some reason, but now we know. For the console, we now know that this thing deals kinetic damage, but it is a kinetic damage that does scale with EPG, so that still could be pretty good for EPG builds. Additionally, the passives, which were also left out of the blog, those are here on the tooltip. It actually increases crit chance and crit severity for your exotic damage abilities, which again sounds really good for exotic damage builds like EPG and stuff like that. Now, Casual SAB did test this on a live stream, which he wasn't able to get super great numbers on it, but he also wasn't testing it on a full EPG build, so I still think you can get some pretty decent numbers out of this thing on a full-fledged EPG build, but at the same time, don't take my word for it, because I don't own the ship. I have not been able to test this thing myself, and I haven't seen anyone else testing it yet. The Nova Flyers, they have beam overload and torpedo spread, and that aura, the avoidance aura thing. That's the thing where, they're close by you, you'll be harder to hit. They've got dual cannons, turrets, a phaser beam array. This says plasma. That's confirmed to just be a tooltip typo. The actual in-game versions do have a phaser beam array. That's just, a misprint. And a photon torpedo. These things, they'll be okay damage dealers. Like, if I didn't have superior area denial, these would be pretty nice, because beam overload still hits pretty nicely even on pets. But yeah, if I had SAD, that beam overload would be pretty much going to waste, but they do still have the dual cannons, the turret, and the beam array that would all take advantage of SAD. They're okay. Honestly, there are other pets that would take better advantage of it. Like, I don't think these things are going to beat out the Todouche fighters or even the Valkyries, so I would still go with either of those. And overall, like, the Type 7s are still going to reign supreme over these things because of the crazy amount of debuff those things put out, so you're just flying these for space, Barbie. And finally, for what's going to bring us into the main topic of this video, Starfleet Hopefuls, the Starship trait off of the Lamar. This thing does a few things, again, none of which were included in the blog for some reason, because it has various effects depending on what bridge officer abilities that you use. Using an ensign bridge officer ability from science, engineering, or tactical will give you one of 3 different buffs. If you activate a science ability, you will get +10 to auxiliary for 10 seconds, which really isn't that great. It doesn't even buff maximum auxiliary power, it just gives +10 auxiliary. This is when activating an engineering ability, it gives +50% power recharge speed. Now, again, Casual SAB did test this in a live stream, and from what he could tell, this part of the ability is just broken entirely. No, we could not figure out what the heck this was supposed to be buffing the recharge of, so currently it's assumed that this is broken. But again, not the main topic of this video, because the third part is for tactical ensign abilities, it will increase the duration of ensign level beam firing modes by 10 seconds. As soon as that got out, people were immediately assuming that this could be the long-awaited Fire at Will extension trait that we have been waiting for so freaking long. And spoiler alert, it's not. And that's partially because this Starship trait has a 30-second lockout period. Now, the way the tooltip is worded, that it kind of suggests that the lockout period only applies to the science portion of this Starship trait, but no, testing has confirmed that that 30-second lockout period will apply to all 3 of these buffs. So that also means that even with this +10 seconds to Fire at Will, you're still only going to get about 75% uptime for Fire at Will, which is not what you want from a firing mode extension. You want to be able to get as close to 100% as you possibly can, meaning a full 100% uptime. You want your firing mode to be off cooldown as soon as it's done through its firing cycle. You want that thing to be ready to be activated as soon as it's done. The other big reason that this Starship trait falls flat for Fire at Will is because it only affects ensign level firing modes, meaning it will only affect Fire at Will 1. It'll also affect Beam Overload 1, but Beam Overload already has a proper extension trait. That's Super Weapon Ingenuity. But yeah, Starfleet Hopefuls will not have any effect on Fire at Will 2 or 3. In fact, it won't even work with the Vincent Kish Duty Officer. In testing, anytime the Vincent Kish Duty Officer triggered the Fire at Will 2, the extension trait was immediately dropped, or the extension buff was immediately dropped from the ability. So this will have no effect on anything higher than Fire at Will 1. So yeah, this is far from the firing mode extension trait that we've been wanting for Fire at Will for the longest time now. Like, seriously, I've gone on this rant before. I don't know what it is about Fire at Will that the devs are just so adamant about just tiptoeing around. It's the only firing mode for energy weapons that doesn't have a proper extension trait. Beam Overload has Super Weapon Ingenuity that increases its duration by 5 seconds. Actually, I should just show you in game. Yeah, here, Super Weapon Ingenuity increases Beam Overload by 5 seconds, and then there is Withering Barrage. This is the one for Cannon Scatter Volley. This will increase Cannon Scatter Volley's duration by 4 seconds. Not quite as long as Super Weapon Ingenuity, but that is, 5 seconds. The difference between 4 and 5 seconds is really not that big of a deal. So Withering Barrage is still like one of the best things to have on a Scatter Volley build. Then there's also Go for the Kill, which that's the extension trait for Rapid Fire. This one works a little differently because it relies on scoring critical hits, but at this stage in the game's life, scoring critical hits is a very easy thing to do. So yeah, that's perfectly fine for an extension trait. You can get Rapid Fire up to its maximum duration very easily with the Starship trait. And then, of course, there is... what's the last one called? Vanguard Specialists. Off of the legendary Jem'Hadar attack ship, which actually you can also get Go for the Kill off that same ship. And this is the extension trait for all of the specialization firing modes. So that's Surgical Strikes, reroute reserves to weapons, exceed rated limits, as well as also extending the abilities for recursive shearing and suppression barrage, even though those aren't firing modes, but those specializations did not have firing modes, so that's why those are there. But yeah, all 4 of those Starship traits will just extend the durations of those firing modes, just normally, without any other annoying caveats. They just extend it. Just that's all it needs to do. But for some reason, Fire at Will has never been given such a Starship trait. There are other traits that will extend Fire at Will's duration in some way or another, but they always have some sort of weird gimmick or caveat or some sort of other obligation that just makes them not nearly as effective as those other Starship traits. So by not only are those options not as good as those Starship traits, they're overall just hurting Fire at Will in comparison to those other abilities. In fact, one of them is right here. In Twine Tactical Matrices, this is probably the most popular method of quote-unquote extending Fire at Will, because but the thing with this trait is that you're not actually extending Fire at Will. It's allowing you to quickly flip-flop between 2 different versions of Fire at Will. So you have the one that is on your Bridge Officer tray, whether it be, Fire at Will 1, 2, or 3, but then you'll also be able to easily trigger another version of Fire at Will 1 just by activating Torpedo Spread. And Twine Tactical Matrices technically does the job that you need it to, but it comes with the annoyance of that you're only going to have Fire at Will 1 half the time instead of, possibly Fire at Will 2 or 3, and you need to have Torpedo Spread on your build as well, which normally you're going to have a Torpedo and probably Torpedo Spread on your build no matter what, especially with an energy weapon build. But the thing is, because of the timing on the Starship trait, you need to be able to have your torpedo up in a certain duration, usually within 10 seconds. So that means you cannot use a torpedo that has a cooldown of longer than 10 seconds. So that means torpedoes that are like Maelstrom torpedoes or even energy torpedoes are completely useless within Twine Tactical Matrices because the recharge time is just too long. You use those and you will be hurting the effectiveness of your Fire at Will because you won't be able to get Fire at Will up quickly enough. No other build type has those sort of annoying issues. I literally cannot use one of the best torpedoes in the game, that's the Quantum Maelstrom torpedo, on a Fire at Will build because of the restrictions within Twine Tactical Matrices. Now, I'm sure you're going to say, yeah, well, you could use redirecting arrays, and let me tell you about redirecting arrays. First off, I apparently never bothered to unlock it on this character. Whoops. Now, while redirecting arrays technically extends Fire at Will, there are 2 reasons as to why it sucks. For one, it requires you to take damage repeatedly over time, so this is only going to work if you are repeatedly taking damage. Yes, that's going to be fine during solo content, but during TFOs, that could be a problem because it is very possible that there could be another player, doing more threat than you will be doing. Meaning, if you're not generating threat, you're not getting shot at. And if you're not getting shot at, redirecting arrays will not be extending Fire at Will's duration. The other problem with this trait is that it only gives a maximum duration of 15 seconds for Fire at Will. Fire at Will's minimal cooldown is 20 seconds, so there's going to be a full 5 seconds that you will not have Fire at Will up. And the whole point of wanting an extension trait is to be able to have your firing mode as close to 100% active all the time. With redirecting arrays, you're only going to be able to get 75% uptime, which, funny enough, that's going to be the same with Starfleet Hopefuls. Both traits are only going to give you 75% uptime for Fire at Will. It's just that redirecting arrays requires you to get shot at, while Starfleet Hopefuls restricts you to only using Fire at Will 1. The really funny thing is that redirecting arrays and Starfleet Hopefuls actually stack together. But the real joke of it all is that they still will not give you 100% uptime, even with both Starship traits, because of that 30-second lockout period on Starfleet Hopefuls. So that just brings us back to the question that is probably going to end up being the title of this video. Why do the devs hate Fire at Will so much? What is it about Fire at Will that they just refuse to give this thing the proper treatment that every other firing mode in the game has? And honestly, I don't know what the answer to that question is anymore. I know a lot of people contribute the hesitance to buff Fire at Will goes back to way back in the day when Fire at Will was like the end-all be-all for DPS. This was well over a decade ago. The Fire at Will was like the top-tier damage dealer in Star Trek Online, and instead of looking at all the other firing modes and figuring out why weren't they doing as well as Fire at Will, they decided to nerf Fire at Will into the ground. That's why Fire at Will has a 20-second global cooldown timer instead of the 15 seconds that every other firing mode has. But honestly, I feel like that's kind of a lame excuse at this point in the game, because, I mean, you look at the power creep on every other portion of the game. Every other firing mode, not just the energy weapon firing modes, but you look at the torpedo meta, you look at the EPG meta, they are so overwhelmingly more powerful than most beam overload builds. And the other thing with beam overload is it always has this weird caveat of needing these obnoxious gimmicks in all of their Starship traits. Like I said, redirecting arrays requires you to get shot at, still doesn't give you 100% uptime. The new one, Starfleet Hopefuls, only affects Fire at Will 1, and again, still doesn't give you 100% uptime. And then ETM, it technically gives you 100% uptime, but that's only because you're swapping between Fire at Will 1 and whatever your Bridge Officer version is. So you're not getting 100% uptime, you're just able to use 2 of them back to back. And even then, that requires you to use Torpedo Spread and a torpedo that has a 10-second cooldown or less, meaning that you're unable to use Maelstrom torpedoes, energy torpedoes, or anything that has a 10-second cooldown or longer. And I'm sick of it. Honestly, I've said several times that Fire at Will is my favorite playstyle to go in with this game. I love just flying into the middle of a battlefield in some big obnoxious cruiser like my Lexington here and firing beams in every freaking direction. I love doing that, and I am so sick of having to deal with Fire at Will's weird eccentricities that all revolve around its lack of a proper extension trait like every other firing mode has. Why does Fire at Will have to be excluded from the fun that all the other playstyles have? Now, going back to Starfleet Hopefuls. Now, there are things they could do to the Starship trait to make it more appealing for Fire at Will users, but frankly, I'm going to be honest here, I don't want them to do that. I don't want them to change this Starship trait at all, because at the end of the day, this is still a Starship trait off of a promo ship. The Lamar is a promo ship, so putting an extension trait, particularly a good extension trait, onto a promo ship is frankly a dick move. I mean, we've seen it before. They put Go for the Kill on 2 promo ships. No one used Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire, no one gave a shit about Rapid Fire builds. Not just because Rapid Fire was already subpar in comparison to Cannon Scatter Volley, but it just wasn't worth the expense. Super Weapon Ingenuity is at least available on a low-buy ship, which again is annoying that that's not available on an account unlock, but at the same time, at least a low-buy ship is, a little bit more obtainable than, a freaking lockbox or promo ship. But yeah, the Lamar class is a promo ship, meaning it is a very expensive, we're talking like $200 on average, single character unlock ship, which is another rant entirely on why that is still a thing in Star Trek Online. We've all had this discussion, we all hate it, and yet it's still around for whatever reason. And that's why I hope this Starship trait just stays in the condition that it's in, because I don't want this to be the firing mode extender for Fire at Will that we all want. I don't want that to be on the Lamar, because that is like I said, $200 single character unlock ship. I want that to be on an account unlock ship. Now, I know C-Store ships, they don't make the game a lot of money, but, you know, it doesn't have to be on a C-Store ship. That could be on a legendary ship. It can be on something that is exclusive to some kind of bundle. I don't care if it's expensive. I just don't want to have to pay for it multiple times. So put it in a legendary bundle. Put it in some other kind of bundle exclusive thing. Like I said, I don't care if it's expensive. I just only want to pay for it once. And honestly, that goes for a lot of other things in Star Trek Online too, because like the single character unlock thing has always been the biggest problem for Star Trek Online, in my opinion. And again, like I said, I feel like that just applies to so many other things. I don't care if it's expensive. I just want to pay for it once. I swear, that's just going to be my new tagline from now on. Honestly, I'd love to be able to sit down with, you know, someone on the systems team to just talk about this. Talk about why Fire at Will is just kind of treated, you know, as like a second-class firing mode to all of the other firing modes in Star Trek Online. Just I want to know. I've talked about this multiple times, and I feel like I'm just shouting into the void. I want words. I want answers. I want just some kind of back and forth would be nice. But yeah, not much else to say with this one, so I'll just ask you guys, what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below, and while you're down there, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. If you'd like to further support the channel, hit that join button to become a member, or find the link to the merch store down below. Or if you're ever shopping on the Epic Game Store, be sure to use my content creator code STU1701. Really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it either way though. My name's Stu, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.